question I get asked a lot is, Paul, what's your favorite rose? And that's a hard question to answer. But I can answer what's the nursery that breeds most, if not all, of my favorite roses. Welcome to a conversation with Arnaud Delbard. I first met Arnaud about 20 years ago. I was in France and I asked him, I said, Arnaud, why aren't your roses in the United States? And he went, well, no one's ever asked us. And I said, I'm asking. So 20 years ago, Ashdown Roses, my former nursery, we were the first person to bring Delbard roses to the United States. And that ranks as probably one of my proudest achievements I've ever done in the world of roses, was bringing Arnaud Delbard's roses, vision of his family, to the United States. So welcome. We're going to go meet Arnaud and have a talk about his roses, his family history, which is fascinating, breeding program, his vision, and most of all, his passion.
Arnaud, it is so good to see you, and I am so excited to talk about you and your roses and your family. But how are you doing today?
We're doing very well. Thank you very much.
Good.
Nice in France, and the weather is, it's the autumn season now, so the harvesting is starting. So that's very nice.
That's always an exciting time, and you live in a beautiful part of France. I mean, it's gorgeous to be down at the countryside and just all the natural beauty that goes with it.
Yeah, we're very lucky. Thank you.
Yeah, it's lovely there. So I want to jump right in, first of all, with the roses, because that's, you also do obviously dahlias. You're known for your apples and some of your pioneering in apple breeding. So it's not just roses that you do. Also, you do cut roses as well, that the cut flower industry, Red Intuition being, of course, one of your more well-known cut roses. But it's the garden roses that I want to talk about. And just to sort of set this up a little bit, I first got to know your roses probably close to 20 years ago. I was in the Finesci garden in Italy, in Tuscany, and I was rounding the corner that they call the hybrid muskwalk. And I saw some roses off to the side, and I asked the person I was with, I said, what are those? And they said, they're Delbard roses. And I said, what's a Delbard rose? Because you were not in the United States. Nobody really knew who you were back then. And what was interesting to me was, as I traveled through Europe and saw trials in Paris and Lyon and stuff, I was actually able to pick out your roses without even seeing the label, just defining characteristics. And that's when I first fell in love with them, and that continues to this day. So I want it coming from you, third generation owner of a company that's now, I think, 86 years old, if my memory serves, started in 1935. What is a Delbard rose as told by Arnaud Delbard?
That's a difficult question. I would say that Delbard rose is really, first of all, is of course a plant, but it's also a feeling that you'll get when you look at it, and that overwhelms you. And in that sense, I mean that it's plenty of flower. You must have beautiful foliage, and it's something that is alive, fully alive, and wants to talk to you, wants to share is beauty with you. And I think that's how I would define it.
Yeah, I think that defines the characteristics well. And I like, most people, when you say, what is this rose? What do they say? Well, it's disease resistant, it's this, and they list, technical characteristics. And your roses evoke an emotion, I think, is the best way that I could put that. And I think, most roses do, but yours in particular do. And the other thing that I would say that defines your roses is fragrance, perfume. You talk about this all the time. So talk about that. How important is perfume or fragrance to you?
I think, as you say, people talk about disease and all those things, and I think they are very, very important, and they're part of our program. And all of the variety must have those characteristics in order to be able to go through. Once you have that, then you, as you say, you bring the emotion. And I think that's what people want. They want to share, they want to enjoy, they want to be able to live with it. And perfume is a great characteristic, because the world of perfume in roses is just amazing, huge. We had some of the varieties scientifically analyzed, and we found up to 150 55 different perfume olfactive notes in just one rose. So it's just amazing. And I think that's something very, very important. And what's more important is that, again, a rose can be perfumed, but in order to enjoy it, you need to be able to describe it. You need to be able to communicate with the people around you, the feelings and what it expresses to you. And the first thing is to learn how to smell a rose. So we put we have developed what we call the triangle pyramid, olfactive pyramid, where we explain what is a perfume in general. So it's not just for roses, but it's for everything. And where you know that the rose is made of, I mean, the perfume of a rose is made with the head, with the heart and the bottom of the perfume, and each one means different fragrance, which can be citrus, can be roses, can be lilac, can be mushroom, and things like that. So each of our variety today have an identity card for the perfume.
Yeah, I remember seeing the scent triangles. That's one of the first things that you introduced me to when I first met you way back when, and they're wonderful to do because, you know, I think for the gardener, it gives you the ability to stick your nose into your roses. And by the way, you can smell them quite often from without even sticking your nose into your roses. That's how strong the scent can be on many of them. You can then look at the triangle and you can begin to like educate yourself, like you said, learn how to smell a rose. And those scent triangles are phenomenal tools and very unique to you, I would say, as well, that are really wonderful to have. And as far as health goes, having grown a lot of your roses in my garden, upstate South Carolina, no spray, they're some of the healthiest roses I have, and they're just wonderful. And like you said, it's that emotional feel that I always get when I see your roses. That's what really grabs me. That's what I love. So you've been breeding roses for a long time, your family. I'd like you to talk a little bit about, you know, so you breed a rose, you then say, okay, maybe this is going to come in. What steps do you put it through before you introduce it? What's your testing program like?
First of all, we breed, to breed is to marry two different varieties. Okay. So we put, and we do that about 20,000 times a year. So we pollinate 20,000 flowers every year between April to June. So that's a big task. From that, we get up to 150,000 to 250,000 seeds. Each of these seeds are potentially a new variety. They are brothers and sisters. Maybe they can be cousins, but they're not alike. So, and then we put them in the ground. We see the first flower. And from that, the first flowers we see, we select on mainly emotion and characteristic of the flower. We don't look at the plant because the plant is too young. So we look at the color, the shape, the size, the perfume eventually. And then it goes to the field, to an open field where we let it live or survive, I would say. A bit difficult. But harsh, but that's how it is. Yeah. We let it survive for about 3 to 5 years, to 7 years sometimes, where we have no spray of any chemical. We only put fertilizer and we water when needed. That's all we do. And we look at them every summer and spring, summer, and fall to see, and we take notes on number of flowers, disease resistance, the way it reflowers in autumn, of course, the perfume, all the characteristics that will make a rose a great rose.
Yeah, and I've seen the trials, and they're wonderful. And I like the fact, again, no spray, and like you said, they survive. You don't coddle them at all, which is a great first cut. And I think that gives the home gardener a lot of confidence. And then from there, I know then you branch into, you do a lot of rose trials in Europe and that you enter quite as well. You get results from that. And part of what I'm driving with this is because your roses are still somewhat new to the United States, I think it's important for United States rose gardeners and rose lovers and gardeners in general to understand that your roses are coming with an enormous history behind them in terms of not only breeding, but testing and results, your observances, and the fact that you're quite harsh on them in the beginning.
Yeah, we're very harsh. I mean, we love them, but we're harsh, and we love the good ones. No, it's a process that takes 5 to 7 years, you know, from the breeding to the final decision to be able to say, okay, this variety will be put on the market, will be able to go and grow into a home gardener. We have great testing facilities here. We also test them throughout the world. So we have a testing facility in the States, 2 testing facilities in the States. We have some in all over Europe, in Germany, in Belgium, Italy, and so on. We also have some in China. We have some in New Zealand, Australia, and even Japan. So we bring all those data together, and I think it's particularly important for the American market, because your country is so wide and so big, from north to south or east to west. Yeah. You have all the climate. You go to desert to great frost, and therefore, with all that data, we're able to see where it can go. And what we do believe, and what we try to do, is to bring to the US market varieties that can perform well in California, but maybe also in Louisiana or up north in the States, where it's very cold, and they are hardly, sorry for my English, they are winter resistant, frost resistant. And so all this is important. And to help us to do that, we also have some contests in Europe. And I think there's 2 main contests in Europe that are, there's about 20 that are all very good. But there's 2 that I think that are very interesting, is what we call the ADR. It's a German contest where you have one variety tested at, I think, 5 or 6 different locations throughout Germany, north, south, east, west, different altitude, different climatic condition, and the variety that get that award needs to perform everywhere in all those sites very well, meaning that it has the potential to do well everywhere. And we have the same thing now for the past 10 years, I think, in France. It's called SNHF. It's it's the Société Nationale d'Horticulture de France, who did the same thing in France. And with the addition that in France, we have the south, you know, the south part of France, more like, I would say, California or the western coast of the US. So that brings another thing for us, for the data. And those contests are very important for us. And we're lucky, or roses are lucky, because they win some of them quite often. So meaning that they are performing well.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised your roses are winning. I mean, you're being modest here, Arnaud. You know, your roses are amazing. And like you said, you mentioned the United States, you know, the vast climates that we have, and your roses for United States growers, the Delbard roses are hardy to zone 5, which pretty much covers the United States. Some of them are even more hardy than that. But there's really not many places you can't grow them. I know they were grown in New York, and I know the Toronto Botanical Garden has quite a collection of your roses as well that does very well. And I think that's important knowledge to know, and the fact that you're trying them everywhere and taking that data and analyzing that data to get the best roses out there. And I think, you know, for people to realize too, you know, you mentioned earlier 150 to 250,000 seedlings, and what, maybe 4 or 5 out of that might end up being a Delbard rose at some point in time.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the small number. Yes. Very, very small number.
Yeah, it's economy of scale.
What's important is to realize that we do 150,000 seeds. We produce 150,000 seeds every year, and out of that year, only 4 or 5 will survive. And we do that every year. It's not like we do it once and then with these 150,000 seeds, we let them go for 10 years. And out of those 10 years, every year we select the 5 and things like that. No, out of those 150,000, we only have 4 to 5, maybe 6 if it's a good year, and we do that every year, and we've been doing that since 1954, I think. So I mean, I don't know if we sum up, I mean, we're in the tens of millions, I think, of babies that that have been born through the company hands.
Yeah, I mean, over that span of time, I mean, since 1954, that's got to be in the tens of millions. And it also just testifies to, people always say with a breeding program, oh, they breed roses, whatever. I think people don't really understand just what goes into it. I mean, having been to your facility, I mean, you have a whole area that's dedicated to just rose breeding with full-time rose breeders on hand.
Yes, it is the case. We have about 10 hectares. I'm sorry, I don't know acres it makes in English, but
I'll translate that later.
Okay. But we have about 10 hectares, and we have a team of about 10 people who are well-dedicated people, because they are. Those people love their work and they're eager to do better and to do that. And one thing that I wanted to mention is that we said creation of new varieties, but I think creation is only the end of God. We're not God. We create, but more than create, we try to ameliorate what's already existing. Okay. And I think that's what's very important into a breeding program. Of course, we ameliorate, we make it better, and we can make it better in many different ways. Of course, the color, of course, the perfume, but the disease, the shape, the growing habit. And what's interesting is that sometimes you look at a rose, just the rose, the flower, and you see it on a small shrub, something that doesn't grow, and then you said, but this rose, this flower is beautiful. I need to try to put it on a climber, or to try to put it on a ground cover, and that's what's exciting, because then you try really to create something new which is better than the existing things. And I think that's what's very important. And in the team that we have, we're always are trying to say, is it better than what we already have? If it's not better, then there's no point of bringing it, showing it, or giving the opportunities to anyone to try it, because there's no point. The idea is to make the rose gardener a better life, an easier life, and just enjoy emotion, and not emotion of, I would say, anger because there's no more foliage, or anger because he has to take his spraying machine. No, we want to bring him emotion of joy, of happiness, of being able to share with other people.
Yeah, and I think I want to go back to something that you mentioned. You mentioned a very good point that does, I know, drive your philosophy. You talked about, this is a beautiful flower on a bush that's so. So can you hang that flower on a climber or on a better bush? And I think that also talks to your vision when you talk about your roses. It's not just the flower that you're looking at. You're looking at the entire bush itself. You're looking at it as a whole, by the context of a whole, because for the gardener it is, because there's going to be points in the time when that rose bush may not have flowers on it. Well, it's still got to be a good-looking plant at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's what you go ahead.
No. That's very important. In the field where we have 5 hectares of field where we only test outside. The first flowers we see springtime is usually here in France, in the center of France, is about end of May, beginning of June, and the first 2 weeks, what I do is I look at the field, and I try to always find a field that has a slope, so I can see the whole field at once. And not flat, because if it's flat, you only see the first ones, and then you don't. You have to go inside, but you don't have the overview. And I think it's important to have an overview at the beginning, and then from this large view, you get closer, like a stick, like a binoculars, or macroscope. And those first 2 weeks for me are more into looking at this overview and just run into the one that catch my eyes.
I was going to ask you that.
You know, it can be 50 meters away or it can be 2 meters away. And I run. I walk there and I look at that, and just to see, because it shows a mass of colors, okay? And then you go and say, wow, this is the one that has the most flowers, so it must be something. Then you go inside, you look at it. Maybe the flower is really nothing interesting when you look close from it, but at least it has this eye-catching, this bit of wow thing that you can find and that you can see from the beginning. And that's something important for me to do, because then that's the first thing. The second thing is that the first flowers are the one that will flower the most earlier of the year, which is good, but it also can be bad. And you don't want all your variety to flower at the same time, because otherwise you'll have a beautiful garden for 15 days and then no more flowers, you cut them back, they come again at the same time. And so it's important to look at that. We call it precocity or no precocity in the flower, to be able to have in your range of flowers, of varieties, different timing. So the first flower will not be all the same week, but can be 1 week later or 2 weeks later. Makes your garden, when you have more varieties, still alive and still neat, because the first one might not have any more flower, but you will have the second one with neat flower and the third one coming flowers.
Yeah, that's important, I think, too. And I like your idea of planting them on a slope. I've never actually heard of anyone doing that, but that was the first thing that came to my mind when you mentioned that. Was, I'm sure when you're standing back, some of them must just leap out, which you obviously you mentioned, and you walk there. We would run, but I like that. And the flowering at different times is important, particularly if you live like where I live. My flowering starts the end of April, and I will frequently have roses. If I don't get a late frost, I'll have roses in November. So I don't want everything in a 15-day window. I want that to stretch out and take its time. And then also then you also get the reflower. But then you said you have a garden that's in bloom over great lengths of time. So I think I want to wrap this up. So I think the takeaways are, and I think again for even though we have a worldwide audience for this, for the U.S. growers in particular, there's a lot of history and a lot of knowledge and a lot of analysis that goes into your roses before they're released anywhere. And so the ones that coming into the United States all have that behind them. But there's also the emotion that comes into your roses that are released. And I think so we asked this again is, what is a Delbard rose? And I think we've answered that. It's gone through head and it's gone through heart, and the two come together. And I think that's what brings your roses together.
I think emotion, passion is important. You have to have the passion we have the passion of our products. And when I say we, it's not me. It's, of course, I do, and I think you can sense it when I speak. But it's also the whole company. The core of the company is that, and I think that all the people that are working here have this passion about the plant that they work, whether it's for roses or dahlias or fruit trees. We need to have that, because sometimes it's difficult, and again, 150,000 seeds, 4 at the end. You live your life through deception most of the time, and you only find 4 or 5. So you need this passion, this drive to say, no, but there will be one. We're going to find one, and we'll make it better. And that's why passion and emotion is very, very important. And of course, harsh and hardworking people.
So Arnaud, I know your company started in 1935. You're the 3rd generation, which is remarkable that it's only 3 generations in a company that is with that long history. So I think the viewers would love to know, because it is an amazing story of your family and the nursery. So would you take us back to your grandfather, George, starting the nursery, and then just kind of run us through a brief history of Delbard roses and your family?
Yeah, of course, with pleasure. I think the history of the company is really an history of passion a passion of roses and people dedicated to roses and fruit trees, but dedicated to the nursery world. My grandfather started in 1935 with no education. He was in I would say, it was maybe 10th grade for you in the US. Okay, so he knew how to read and how to count. He started to work here near Malicon, where we are. I mean, our family has been originated here since, I think, 1600 something. So we've been around here for quite a while. We were bred here, definitely. When he was 16, he started to work into a mining company as a clerk, because he was able to, I mean, he knew how to read and write. And he worked for, I think, 2 years. I think his manager got retired, and he said, okay, I'm intelligent, I'm a working man. I hope that I will get the position. And this was a big mining company run from Paris, and they sent a new manager from Paris. So he said, okay, I will never be able to move forward that. So I resigned. And he resigned, and he was fan of gardening because his priest uncle was a great gardener, and he was spending a lot of time there to do the garden. So he said, okay, I'm going to the capital, to Paris, and I don't know, I'll find something there. And he went to Paris. It was 1930 something, and he went to. He was hired by a great family, well known in France for the horticulture, named Truffaut, Georges Truffaut. And you have two big families in France: is Georges Truffaut and Villemorin, which were able. We brought many different species and brought the garden to the French consumers. And after 2 or 3 years, he became his right hand. And in 1934, this man died, and the family took over. And my grandfather again resigned and said, "Okay, now I'll do my own business." But from what? You know, he was just, parents, no money, not much to do. So he went to Quai de la Mégisserie, which is along the Seine River in Paris. And just behind you had the hall, which is the big mass market where all the grocery stores and were coming to buy their food and everything. And he's just put a piece of wood with 2 piler and bought a few plants and start to sell the plants from the street, you know. And it worked very, very well, very well. So after a year, he was able to to rent the store that he was in front of on the road, on the street, and it became the first Delbard garden centers. So at that time, he was not producing; he was just buying from suppliers, put them into their to his store and selling it. In 1935, at the same time, he had a mail order company. So he started to send his first catalog. You remember 1935, so 86 years ago, he had a catalog that he was putting into the mailbox, and people were ordering, and they were coming to pick up the goods at his place. And so that goes up to I would say to the end of the Second World War. Okay, and then on 1946-47, he wrote a book called Les Beaux Fruits de France, The Beautiful Fruit of France, and this really started the company. So we're talking about roses today, and that's very good. But the essence and the starts of the company really, as it is today, it really started with the book that he wrote about fruits. And apples, pears, cherries, apricot, anything you wanted. And he wrote a beautiful book, which was very didactic, and where people could start from page 1, which is how do you define the ground that you want to plant on, up to the last page, where is how you present the fruit that you were able to harvest. uh, on in a store, or you preserve them and everything, and you have the whole thing as choose of the rootstock, choose of the variety, how to prune it, what different shape you can have, of course, a lexic of different varieties that you can use in France, and pest and disease and everything. And this book some of it was in color and went all around the world. So you can find it at UC Davis, you can find it in St. Petersburg University. I'm sure you can find it in China at that time. And there was people who wrote to him and said, Mr. Delbard, your book is fantastic. You're talking about beautiful varieties, but here in Ukraine, we have varieties that I'm sure you can be used. In the States, he had the same people. I mean, some people doing that. And he received plenty of budwood, so new varieties coming from all over the world. I think since then, we have received maybe 2,000 different varieties of apples. I think 1,800 different varieties of pears that we didn't breed. They were coming from overseas or outside. I think we had cherries, but we have also strawberries or raspberry. I mean, it was just amazing. And he had this great idea, is that he came back to Malicorne and he said to his father, he said, Dad, you have 10 hectares where he was growing a bit of cereal and having a few cows. I rent them from you, so you stop being a farmer. And he started to do all those budwood, all those varieties, started to grab them and to put them into this orchard that became, and we still have it, the main orchard. And he started to select new varieties, and so it takes some time to select a variety of apple, because you need the fruit to bear. And what came out of it, he said, new varieties, interesting one, is the one who introduced it who has introduced in Europe Golden Delicious, who has introduced Royal Gala. So I think those are world well known.
Yeah, those are both well known in the United States.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
And remember, he's alone. He has 2 or 3 people around him. He has a little shop. So
and I think it's also important to remember that he's doing this. We're talking about only about a 20-year span at this point in time.
Yes, exactly.
End of the World War. We're in the really,
yes. And we don't have any computers,
or smartphones.
No smartphones, and he doesn't speak a word of anything than French.
Wow.
And so he's finding people around him. He's just moving mountains in a way. And his great idea is that at this time, so it's been 15 years since he's working on that, he received all those plants, varieties, and he said, okay, now I have a genetical bank that I'm going to breed from. But again, when he starts that, he knows that he will be able to gain what he's thinking of today, if everything works, only in 15 or 20 years time.
Yeah, because fruit trees are going to take even longer than roses.
Exactly. So I mean, the man has a vision, has a drive where time doesn't. I mean, nothing hurts him. It's just moving forward. Yeah. And so that's how we started. And now we started with 10 hectares here in Malicorne. Now we have 600. Okay. He started with growing 2,000 or 3,000 plant of fruit trees. Now we grow more than 2 million, and roses the same thing. So it's really. He really, build up a road, a beautiful road, an highway for us to be able to continue. So a great achiever and somebody with a vision and this mindset, amazing.
That's an amazing story. I mean, I will be honest, I knew parts of it. I didn't know all the detail that you just went into, which is fascinating. So for you and your father then, because I mean, you're now running the company now, you're third, as I mentioned, third generation. That's quite a bit of history. It's wonderful to have that history, but do you also feel a responsibility to that history?
Of course, I mean, you feel the responsibility. Sometimes it's a bit heavy, but it's also a great motivation, you know, to be able to continue, and not only to continue, because when you only continue something, the thing dies. You know,
Yeah.
so you need to continue it, but also to reinvent it, to bring novelties, to bring to find new challenge for yourself and for the company. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, is that to have and to know and to be the héritier, hair, or heritage. You have all those, this heritage coming to you, with your backpack, but your backpack is in the back, and you need to go forward. So you need to invent with your backpack what will be the future of the company, and in that case, what will be the future of the varieties that you will try to bring on the market.
Yeah, so it's really building on your grandfather's legacy that you're carrying forward. And like you said, you know, it's I think sometimes some nurseries fall into a rut of just sort of say, okay, we have a red hybrid tea, a white hybrid tea, a yellow hybrid tea, a pink hybrid tea, and then next year we'll do a red hybrid tea, and maybe there's a little bit of improvement here and there. But I think what you're saying, and I think what's proven in your roses, and also what you talk about with your fruit trees, is you're not looking for the next great red hybrid tea or the next great pink floribunda or the next great yellow shrub. You're looking for the next great thing, for lack of a better word.
I mean,
in what you're doing.
Yeah, if we find a great new red hybrid tea, we'll be very happy. Huh? Okay.
No one's going to complain about that. No.
No, but what we try to do is, I think, and that's not my grandfather who brought that. It's my father after who brought that. Is my grandfather who Henri.
Your father's Henri, yeah.
Yes, Henri. My grandfather it was after the Second War, so it was, you know, everything was possible. Money was coming from the States, you know, and we had, so development, industrialization, everything. I mean, you were doing something, I mean, unless you were really stupid or bad, you were a little bit successful. So when you were very good, you were very, very successful. And you had to produce, bring food to the people. I mean, that's those terms. So that's why he started with the apple and pears, because they needed orchard to have fruit for consumption. Okay. And then my father came into the company, followed those footsteps, instead of just my grandfather really pushed on the European market. Then when started to look around, and my father came in with a vision of really going international. So he has created an orchard in Iran, 1 million trees, 150 hectares from zero to. And all those plants were coming from Malicorne here, by plane to Iran and everything. He did the same thing in Iraq. I mean, we had contact in China, in Russia, where you still had the big walls, you know, communism and everything. So my father was in a way also a visionary, somebody that wanted to develop and wanted to open his mind and his knowledge to many people. And then in the 1980s, he really, mass production was a bit less, and he realized that a product cannot just be a good product. A product needs to bring an emotion, needs to bring a passion for the consumer to like. And that's what everybody calls, I mean, at least we call the added value of a product. And the added value of a product is not just the if we speak about a rose, the agronomic of a rose, that it grows well, it disease free, it flowers a lot, but it's also all the surrounding. like in the luxury. Why do you buy back Louis Vuitton $4,000 or $6,000 or maybe $10,000, where you can have a bag of which can be the same use to put your keys in or whatever, but okay, this is added value, and that's what we try to, and that's what he really realized and he put in place, and again, I learned from that, and.
It's an amazing history of your family, and you started talking about your father and the emotion that goes into the roses. And one of my favorite books is, of course, this, and I'll put a better copy up on the screen written by your father, called Diary of a Rose Lover, with just some phenomenal watercolors in here, beautiful. And you can feel the passion coming off the pages when you read this book. And you can find it on Amazon. It's not widely available, but you can get it if you hunt for it. It's a book that I would advise people to get. It's just a charming, charming little book. And I think the thing that I'd like to start with, because now I'm going to talk about your roses. Now we get to the fun stuff. Get to talk about your roses themselves. And so I think I'd like to start with the Painter series. It's what you're known for, but that story behind the Painter series, when I first saw them and I thought, oh, they're beautiful. I like stripes, so that's why I was drawn to them. And then you talked about your father seeing him in a field as striped roses, and then all of a sudden something in a museum that he was visiting clicked, and he put the roses and the paintings together. Tell me that story.
I think what when we speak about emotion and passion, it has to have a reality. It's not something, it's not just a story that you invent and we have people buying it. It doesn't work like this. It has to be, you have to have a part of truthness into the story, something that really happened to you and that you believe. And this story of the Painter roses is exactly that. My father was in the field selecting varieties. I was not part of the company at that time, and he saw a striped rose. So those striped rose, bicolor or tricolor rose, that are already on the market. Ferdinand, Lemoine, you have one in the old time roses like this, but that we don't see in the modern roses. I mean, at this time we didn't see. And he looked at that and he said, "Wow, but this is something different. So let's look at it. Before we say it's nice or bad, it's something different. Let's look at it." And he had breeders and people around him from the company and said, no, but this doesn't look like a rose. Henri, one of your crazy idea again. Please, enough. Let's move on to look at this beautiful red rose. Okay, let's go and look at the beautiful red rose. He goes on. And he comes back to Paris, and at that time you have it was the opening of Le Musée d'Orsay, this museum along the Seine River where you have all impressionist painters, and he was invited at the inauguration of that museum, and he went because he likes art and it's a nice place to go, so he goes there and he looks at those paintings from Monet, from Cézanne, from Matisse, from Pissarro, and he looks at that and he said, "But shit, the way I'm sorry," he said, "Zut, zut, the way those painters are putting the colors on the paintings, the way they match the colors, it's really something that I've seen not long ago. But where did I see it?" And then over the sudden he said, "This is in the field when I saw those striped roses." And it seems that it's the same way. Nature used the same combination as those great painters are using to draw their painting. So my father is not scared of anything, so he moves on. So he takes the little catalog from the inauguration, and there you have the name of the person who put together all the art.
Right, sure. The person who built the collection, exactly. The curator who built the collection. Yeah, exactly.
So he took his pen, he wrote him a letter. He said, "Mr. Listen, I found something amazing. Here are a few pictures of the roses that I have, and I think the way nature has put the color together on the petal is the same way as those painters have put their color on the painting. And this person writes him about 2 or 3 weeks later. He said, Mr. Delbard, you're totally right. And picture number 1 is Paul Cézanne. Picture number 2 is Henri Matisse. Picture number 3 is Camille Pissarro. And that's how we started. So, and that's amazing because we can, this guy who's a professional, he's a professional of impressionist, was able to relate the roses and those paintings. And I think that's a great story. That works for everybody. It's true. And we were able. At the beginning, the first painters' varieties were beautiful in terms of flowers, but were quite susceptible to harsh weather and bit disease. And after years and years and years of crossing, now we have some very, very strong varieties, free flowering, scented, and that are performing amazingly.
Yeah, and it's the story that I love. I've always loved this story. It's an amazing story, and I will be have been showing photos and paintings side by side of the roses and the painters, artwork, so people can see. Because when you really do look at the photo of the rose or the rose itself, and a picture of one of the artist's paintings, you can really begin to see what that curator, that expert, began to see. And it also, in a way, sort of encapsulates what you've been talking about with your family, which is that, your father, like your grandfather, and like you in some ways, sees something, has the vision, and despite people telling him no, just goes ahead and does it anyway, and knows where it's going to go. And then you also then say, okay, rather than releasing the roses right out of the gate, you're saying, okay, we need to take this beautiful flower, we need to make a better bush. And so you spend 15 years or 10 years or whatever making crosses to get to where you wanted to go. And I think that encapsulates the story of all your roses. And the painters are beautiful. I would, I've grown most of them, still grow most of them. If I lose one, I go out and get another one. They're never going to not be in my garden. I'll tell you that right now. And let's talk about some of your other roses as well. A rose that I'm tremendously fond of, which I know is now available in the United States, is Petite Prince. And I'm going to butcher the French on all of these, so you are more than welcome to jump in and correct me, because you say it more beautifully than I do. But I mean, that's that. It's a lavender rose that is intensely fragrant, that is also phenomenally disease resistant. I mean, this Petite Prince has it all. I mean, do you remember first seeing that, like in the field or something, that did stand out?
Yes, I remember very well, because it was sometimes we say in French, the stars are are in line, So everything.
Yeah, we have the same expression in English.
You don't understand why, but it's just. Yeah. Everything goes well together. And I remember very well, because that's a fun story. I was in the company and I had the NHK, the new TV from Japan, that comes to me and said, Mr. Delbard, we're going to Bagatelle, the contest of Bagatelle, international contest of Bagatelle. Yeah. And we're going to film there. And we would like to know if you have varieties that are in the contest. And because we would like to film in your nursery, in your testing plots, and we would like to go then after to the contest in June in Bagatelle. I said, of course, please come. And I showed them Le Petit Prince, because I thought it was nice, and it was also in the contest. So we look at the Petit Prince, wonderful here. Then they go to the contest, and the Petit Prince got the first prize for disease resistance and perfume at Bagatelle. So I mean, you can don't buy those contests. So I didn't know that could have happened, but it did happen. And not only it happened, but it happened in front of the TV, So it's something that I don't know, it's great. So that I do remember very well where it was and how it went. But it's definitely, I think it was a breakthrough into the mauve color, not for perfume, because mauve have usually are very well scented, but they're most of the time prone to disease to disease, and black spot mainly, where all the foliage falls down in middle of July or sometime June. And here with this variety, it's a very, very strong bush.
Yeah, because I mean, in the United States, the most well-known mauve is that people talk about is sterling silver, which is, you know, it has a nice fragrance, it has a pretty flower. It's a crap plant. I mean, I'm going to be honest. It's you know, it's defoliated half the time. It doesn't grow. And you know, you took this rose, this color that everybody loves, so this beautiful color, and nicely petaled, intensely fragrant. I can actually smell it before I even get near it, with this phenomenal disease resistance. And you know, some of your other roses, I mean, Hommage à Barbara is a stunner, of course. And so talk about some of your favorites. You know, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. You know, so if you were to think about the roses in the Delbard roses, what are the ones that you love? What are some of the ones that you know, you just still make your heart sing?
The one that I love is the next one I will see.
Yeah, that's a good. What's your favorite rose? The last one I looked at.
No. I think no. When we look at roses, I think that in the Painter roses, I think what's one of my favorite is Maurice Utrillo.
Yeah,
is
striking
red. It's mainly red with a bit of white and vanilla that becomes a bit yellow. I really like the shape of the flower, and what I like is the overall look at the bush, because the flower is quite bright, and the foliage is a dark, not so shiny foliage.
Yeah,
and the contrast. I mean, it's not a contrast. It's very homogeneous. It brings up the flower very, very, very nicely, and I've seen it in many, many different parts of the world, and each time it's been performing always very, very nicely. So this is one I have quite a lot in my garden. So that's for the Painters. Then for the, I would say. For the most modern varieties that we have launched is Julia Andrews, called Pink Paradise in Europe. For me, that was in terms of its very classical shape of flower, bicolor, pink and a bit of yellow. Very nice fragrance. Amazing capacity to flower into a garden, but to flower also into a pot. And you can put it on the terrace, you know, with a big pot and 5-6 gallon, and it will perform very well. And a lot of light. And again, I think what's important is to bring some light into the garden. You know, it's you don't need sunglasses, but you see it when it's blooming, and that's something. And I think for us, it was in terms of disease resistance. It's really. I mean, I think we understood in our breeding program how we were able to bring the disease resistance with this variety. Sometimes you do things by luck. Or nature does things for you and you call it luck. Here, I think we really, at that stage, understood where are the good parents that can bring us that on not a sure base, because nothing is sure, but on a more defined base. And that's important. And the last one, which is for me, it's called Chateau de Cheverny. I don't know if you have seen it, Paul.
I have not seen that one. No.
It's a yellow shrub, about 4 feet high. It's called Belle du Jour in the UK. It got ADR contest in Germany, SNHF in France, and it was Rose of the Year last year in the UK. And for us, French people, to get an award in the UK by the best gardener of the world, because they are the best gardener of the world, is, I think, the ultimate achievement.
That's quite an accomplishment, yes.
So very, very, I mean, you see my smile, huh? Very, very proud. And amazing variety. So this variety is not introduced yet into the US market, but will be soon. So those, I think, I mean, we can speak about many others. But those are the one that I really liked. And the last one as a climber, if we have to speak about climber, is Naema, a pink one. You know it?
Outstanding. Oh, it's in my garden. What an amazing rose.
So that's a beautiful rose. I mean,
heavily petaled. It's very fragrant, and it's a mannerly climber. It's not a thug that takes over. You know, I've actually even grown it as a full standing shrub. You can even grow it that way. But you know, trained along a fence or over a smaller arbor. Very floriferous, and a beautiful, very fully petaled. Just a charming rose, Naema,
and amazing fragrance.
Another rose that I referred to earlier is Hommage of Barbara, known as Dancing in the Dark in the United States, and widely available. And this is the color is so rich. I mean, tell me something about this rose, that amazing, beautiful plant.
I think it's an amazing plant first, because it's very bushy, it's compact. So it throws many flowers. What's amazing is the color. It's a dark red, but not too dark. You still have a lot of light into it. So it takes the lights, and on the outside of the petal, you look at it, or people will look at it, but it's like they have a little bit of a silver powder on this side, and it's like it's been going for makeup just for you. You know, it's a bit, but you have to look in the back of so it's a bit hidden. So it's something that to look for. And what also one very interesting thing about this variety is that this variety, when the flower finish, when it's almost dying, the flower by itself falls down. So you don't need to prune in order to have a new flowers coming. So of course you can do it, and sometimes it doesn't fall all the time, but 90% of the time it falls. I have plenty of clients who call me, say, Mr. Delbard, Arnaud, dancing in the dark, but how come I have flowers on the ground? I said, listen, you have dead flowers on the ground for new ones to come. So be happy, you don't have to cut them back. So leave your secateur, your pruner into your pocket and just enjoy the rose. Oh yes, you're right. And it's performing very, very, very well.
Yeah, it's a lovely rose. We call it self-cleaning in the United States, or deadheading itself is what they do. Yeah, so it's all the same. It's basically the same thing, but it is nice. Like you said, it's just constantly, and that also encourages to reflower a little bit faster. So, you know, Arnaud, I know we could spend 5 hours talking about all your individual roses, and while we'd love to do that, I encourage people to go to your website, France, and I'll put the website up on the screen. In the United States, Certified Roses is now carrying the roses in the United States and doing a terrific job with them. In Australia, it's
Rankings Roses, and of course in Europe, it's you is where people can find it, and they're all over. But your website is a great place to begin, and particularly with the photographs and a lot of the great information on your roses. I'm sorry, it's in French, but the names are the same, so you'll be able to. People who don't speak French can still go and browse there and have a.
They are, but there's Google Translate and the pictures.
You're right.
Pictures, and the pictures are in every language. That's all. I'll say that right now. You have wonderful photography. So I'd like to kind of circle back a little bit now, just to button this up. As I said, we can talk about your roses all day, and I definitely encourage people to go to those sites that I talked about. Grow Delbard roses. I've had them in my garden for 20 some odd years. I'm never going to not have Delbard roses in my garden. It's just not going to happen in my lifetime. So we talked about your passion, and so here you are, third generation, company's 86 years. Obviously, there's a business end to what you do. You talk about breeding 150,000, 200,000 seedlings. You've got to go through them. There's all that aspect. There's all the things you do with. At the end of the day, Arnaud Delbard, the gardener, the rose lover, the grower of roses. When you go into like a beautiful fall evening right now into the rose garden, what makes your heart sing as a gardener? Talk about that. Talk about your emotion as someone who gardens and walks among the roses.
I think for me, I like to walk alone in my garden, but not too long. I like to share what I have, what I'm able to show. So for me, Arnaud Delbard gardener is somebody who walks, looks at gardens, at roses, but with other people, with friends, with amateur of roses, where we can speak, we can exchange. And that's the whole concept that we have around that, is that in order to enjoy something, for me, and I love to enjoy life, but to enjoy it, you need to share it. To be alone, and of course, I do appreciate a beautiful sunrise or sunset alone, but what's even better, or what is also as good as, is to speak about that sunset or sunrise that you saw 2 weeks ago somewhere with your friends and people around you. So I think for me, my drive is really to, of course, create and find new varieties, make them better, but to bring them to somebody else, and not just to create them and have them in my nursery or in my garden for myself. No, for me, it would be boring, really. The idea is really to share. So what is the next thing is to share. So to try to share as much as possible. I think the medias and what we're doing today, this type of media is something amazing, because we can reach so much more people than we have ever dreamed of. There's so many tools again, and more tools, and still plenty of tools to invent, and not only roses. But I think what I would love is to be able to reach as many people as I can, not just to sell them roses, but to share the passion of roses with them.
And I think that sums it up beautifully. Yeah, share the passion of roses. I think that defines certainly who you are, and that defines your company, and that defines your vision. So I'm going to leave it with that. Arnaud, as always, it's a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate you taking the time. And I know we'll see each other again soon.
I hope we'll be able to see each other face to face in real. We can touch to each other, you know.
Exactly, and I know
very soon.
It will be in a rose field, and we're going to do nothing but talk about roses the entire time. And I look forward to that day again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
You too.